We are live. The special meeting of the City of Socorro is set to begin. First and foremost, the City of Socorro would like to thank everyone and ask for your patience during this difficult time we have been presented with. Everyone, please remember to silence any electronics to avoid sound interruption. No disruptive behavior or outbursts will be tolerated, and violators are subject to call disconnection and possible prosecution. In accordance with 418.016 of the Texas Government Code and by order of the Office of the Governor issued March 16, 2020, the City Council of the City of Socorro will broadcast the special meeting scheduled today, May 21st, 2020 at 4 p.m. from City Hall chambers located at Rio Vista Road, Socorro, Texas, via telephone conference and live stream in order to advance a public health goal and practice social distancing to slow the spread of coronavirus COVID-19. The public that signed up and any presenters will be called upon by the presiding officer during the meeting to speak during the public comment or their agenda item during the meeting following Government Code 551.042. La reunión especial del Concilio de la Ciudad de Socorro está por comenzar. Primeramente queremos darles las gracias y pedimos su paciencia durante estos momentos críticos que enfrentamos. Favor de poner en silencio todo equipo electrónico para evitar interrupción de sonido. No se va a tolerar ningún tipo de comportamiento perjudicial o revoltoso. A quien no siga estas reglas, su llamada será desconectada y puede ser infraccionado. De acuerdo con sección 418.016 del Código del Gobierno de Texas y por orden de la Oficina del Gobernador, anunciada el 16 de marzo de 2020, el Concilio de la Ciudad de Socorro transmitirá la reunión especial hoy, 21 de mayo de 2020 a las 4 p.m. desde la sala del Concilio localizada en 860 Rio Vista Road, Socorro, Texas, por medio de teléfono y será transmitida en vivo para tomar medidas preventivas para prevenir la propagación de la enfermedad del virus corona COVID-19 a los demás y por la seguridad del público. El público y los presentadores serán anunciados por el oficial conduciendo la reunión para poder hablar durante la sección de comentario público después de la discusión del artículo de la agenda por cual se apuntaron siguiendo las reglas del gobierno 551.042.
404, the meeting is now called to order. Ms. Rodarte, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3, establishment of quorum.
Rene Rodriguez is absent. Cesar Nevares. Cesar Nevares.
Here.
Ralph Duran. Ralph
You're
Duran.
on mute.
Mayor Elia Garcia.
Here.
Victor Perez is absent. And Ivan Colón Villalobos.
Here. Do we have any speakers?
No speakers for public comment, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to item number 5, workshop on discussion and action on approving capital improvement items for the capital program.
Bless you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Mr. Medina has been working on our capital improvement plan that he will follow the spreadsheet that was sent out to you this morning. So he'll be presenting to you all.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody is ready for the capital improvement presentation. At any given time, please let me know if there's a question. What I've done this time around, I've identified on the left-hand screen of the Excel spreadsheet a roll number. So if you simply say, I have a question on roll number 6, and then we'll talk a little bit more about number 6, for example. Okay. And so one of the things here that we are bound to do is to give a presentation every year to the city council on the projected projects we have for the CIP. And so essentially the capital improvement program is financially and fiscally constrained by a year and up to 5 years. So the table that you see before follows a logical component that we identify projects that are federally eligible for funding, and then we will work our way down into projects that we can let, if you will, at the local level. So one of the things that we have done here with this capital improvement program is that it is a hybrid of the presentation that we had last year, and of course, some of the new identified projects for this year. And the reason for the hybrid presentation is simply because of the unprecedented amount of water that we had received early in this year. It really set back our pavement and some of the other roadway projects that we had aligned. And simply because of this COVID-19 situation, we still don't know when, and hopefully relatively soon, we'll be able to carry on with those projects. But nonetheless, is that they're also presented here just in the event that they have to slide into fiscal year 2021, understanding that funding has already been identified and approved by way of the $10 million of the COs that were approved last year. Along with that is that there are some projects here that do have federal funding already assigned to them. We're either waiting for contracts from our funding agencies like the MPO. And then also there's going to be some discussion by me on opportunities to partner with other agencies who are currently doing other capital improvement projects within our city limits. So for example, the Lower Valley Water District. So before I start, is there anybody have questions or comments?
No.
Okay. So the first set of rows that you see, and I'm looking at row 4 through 10. This is what we call the regional significant roadway package. And essentially these are projects that are eligible for federal aid at the MPO level. So row number 4 is traffic signalization. In the coming years, we are going to need to identify funding so that we may put have a signalized intersection along Nuevo Hueco tanks between I-10 and North Loop. Following that is that we have been successful in getting a project onto the MPO plan. And this is roll number 5, Nuevo Hueco tanks extension. So currently is that we do have this project in the plan. It's a much bigger project per se, but recent communication with the MPO is that we have identified a priority greater than the bigger project is to extend the same cross-section of roadway that we have with Nuevo Hueco tanks. And this would go from North Loop down to Alameda. And so we are looking at an estimated cost of $15 million. With regard to the estimated cost and the projected cost, the difference between those two columns is when we incorporate inflation. So for example, the MPO uses a 4% inflation rate every year and it's compounded. But because we haven't made a determination if this project is going to be in 2022 or in 2024, for example, we're working with the $15 million as of right now. Along with that, part of the development of projects is that with the federal requirements is that we have to do what's called an environmental document. And essentially is that we have to demonstrate that there's some form of plans that demonstrate alternatives within the project. So that design, as we call it, is what is commonly known as a preliminary engineering component. So here is that we do have $1.4 million that has been allocated by the MPO. Essentially, our take in that would be much less once we have that project in the planning documents. Here is that, and I guess let me mention with regard to the MPO and other federal agencies, is that there's always in some way or in the greater combination of a match. So at the MPO, it's an 80/20. In the recent past, there is also a discount, which is called the county disadvantage credit. And essentially is that in lieu of paying the 20%, it could go down to 10, even 7%. That is ultimately authorized by TechStop. Along with that is on roll number 7, these are other possibility of projects that could be nominated. So for example, New Moon Road could be nominated. And the idea is to go from 2 to 4 lanes and also have a multi-use path. And so that could have a 7-foot sidewalk. It could have multiple uses that would encourage pedestrian, bicycle, and of course, transit opportunities. Along with that is that we are also seeking to nominate, if the council approves, Rio Vista Road. So if you all remember some time back, the Socorro Independent School District presented a project to expand the footprint of its high school here in the city. And so there were several things that came about that, and one that was very clear to all of us, to include the school district, is that we really need to expand that roadway. And so through some of the discussions that we had with the leaders of the school district, along with administration and others, is that we currently have worked with them to have a setback of 60 feet. But the combination there is that as we move forward, we really need to provide a design into this project so that we can communicate with others, essentially what we're going to be doing with this roadway. So what we've done here is that row 8 and row 9, what it does is that we're going to present a project to the MPO once this body approves that, to have the construction project, which will be row 9. And row 8 is to really jumpstart the project. So a feasibility study would give us the opportunity to start investigating the possibility of having this roadway done relatively soon rather than later. And of course, row 10, arterial 1, which is the 4-lane divided highway that would stretch from I-10 all the way down to the future Border Highway East. And again, is that we've also had current communication with the MPO, and they're starting a project call. And so if we haven't already nominated the project in the current plan, we just simply have to fill out certain paperwork and file it sometime in June. And so we'll be coming back with that more illustrative list that would also include a resolution, as they require that from the governing body. Does anybody have any questions with regard to the MPO related projects?
I do.
Okay.
So, the Rio Vista, when we got together with Socorro, they did give us the 60 feet setback. I know that they did that in their council as well, when they hold that meeting. The other thing, the issue that we're gonna have to face is that not only do we got the 60 feet setback, we need to talk to the irrigation, because we need to move the irrigation as well. So we need to talk to them as well, which they were in the same meeting we were, and they said that they would, in principle, agree on it. And we do need to start doing the engineering on it, so that they'll know what we're looking for. But this is something that everybody that is in this project, which is the irrigation, the city, and the Socorro Independent School District, agree that we do need to widen this area. But what I want to know is that how long would it take for the engineering to get done?
So ideally, Mr. Rodriguez, is that if dependent upon the year that the MPO has the funding for, it'd be anywhere between 12 to 18 months. Remember, it's a feasibility study. And so one of the opportunities here is that, as you pointed out, it'll give us a snapshot of alternatives. It's going to outline the environmental constraints like the laterals that are in the area. And so it really accelerates the project. And so by doing this, once we have it programmed, once the contracts are signed by the city and TxDOT, simply because they're the ones that account for the funding, 12 to 18 months.
Mayor, and just for the record, Mr. Rene Rodriguez joined the meeting at 4:11.
Well, I was on time, just for the record. It just didn't let me come in for the record. Yeah, that was the only issue that I had, is that we do want to put it in the MPO because we were talking with administration at the MPO, and what council needs to figure out is that what we need to do to move these projects forward. There is only enough money for these projects, and what we need to come up with is a plan for us to really say, and this is a good thing that we're doing for the capital improvement projects, because we need to nominate these and really move them forward. Now, these projects won't be done in our time. I don't believe they will be done in our time, but we do want to set everything in motion so that we can start these projects so that, they could be already on the MPO. And especially because I know that Mr. Reyes from the irrigation is very helpful. We've been working well since we got into office. I know that Socorro is actually looking forward for us to expand the road because we're getting the high school revamped as well. So this is one project that we do need to push forward, as well as the old Waco tanks. But I don't know what you guys think. That's my 2 cents.
Ms. Mayor. Ms. Villalobos?
And Mr. Medina, thank you so much for putting all this together, you and your staff. I know that a lot of these roads that we see here and whatnot, we've discussed it before. We've asked to have you look into it, to either what we need to do to either improve them or widen them, or I see that we also in this report, you also have those that need to be dedicated, and a lot of the residents have asked us to do so. So I trust that what you are presenting is the best way for our city to grow, and to give our citizens what they are requesting. So I want to thank you and your staff for putting this together.
Thank you.
So do we have a motion, or do we need to make a motion?
No, I still need to go down, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
It's a couple of projects. But thank you.
Alrighty. I guess we can move on.
Yes. Can we go back to, there you go, perfect. Okay, so the next item that I'll be talking about are the roadways. And these are roadways, as the district four representative talked about, is that over the last year and then even in the last couple of months, we've identified projects that either this council or previous councils at some point in time committed the city to a certain action. And so whether that was carried out in the past or not, the format here is now essentially to bring forward the capability of a project to this body by way of identifying these roadways. So again, is that these are roadways like Nancy, Vista, Elisa, Stockyard, and Varela that we currently know about, that there have been some dedication in the past, and whether we have the full right of way is something that we need to make a determination. And so the following item that talks about the surveys, they're connected, if you will. So normally, let me just explain this, is that when the city takes on a dedication, we also would ask for a meets and bound or some type of survey that will delineate to us where the right of way is at. So for example, Nancy Road is a roadway that is heavily utilized by the industrial area. Uh, and so it really deteriorates the roadway every time that these trailers are going up and down. More importantly, is that in that area, it's also a depressed component where an arroyo follows through. So every time Public Works goes out there and has to do some type of work, specifically potholes, well, within 3 or 4 days, it's back to the original condition where we have people complaining that we have potholes there. So essentially is that a lot of these roadways here, we will have to take a greater look in its design. So for example, Nancy Road, Vista, Alyssa, and Stockyard, because we have a lot of trucks that use it. One of the things here is that we want to start the conversation about a project because with the decennial census currently on the way, and we hope that by October of next year, we have the final counts, if you will, by the government, is to also make a recommendation to the MPO to functionally classify these roadways as regional significant. And that becomes important because I really believe that there's a good case because this is an entire industrial area. And by nominating them as a federal functional roadway, we are now eligible for federal aid. So although we may or may not be able to fund these projects initially with federal money, I am quite certain that either the construction, but more importantly, the maintenance will be eligible for federal aid. So Varela Road, of course, is one of those other projects that we have been given direction to proceed with roadway construction. And so I'm also leading that effort. And so currently we don't have a cost estimate. I mean, I don't want to put up numbers there that would equal, something that may not be true representation if we're able to break the project apart in its terms of a feasibility study or something to that degree. And of course, I want to emphasize that this is a working document up until we have the budget approved by you all. So of course, we can always come back and entertain any changes with roadways. Does anybody have any questions?
Ms. Villalobos?
Mr. Medina, would you also, since, we can change this, will you also look into right at the corner of Ding Dinger and Socorro, we have the same problem because there's a gas station there and many 18-wheelers use it. And so therefore, that area always has potholes. So you could, look into that. I know that we had discussed maybe talking to the owners of the gas station, but I don't think that's something that the city can impose the gas station to take care of. So it's our responsibility. Thank you.
Yes, we'll go ahead and look at that. And then again, is that one of the things here, going back to the regional significant roadways, is that Socorro Road belongs to TxDOT. And so if we understand that there needs to be some type of operational improvement at the intersection of those two streets, we can make a nomination for that improvement.
Oh, please do so if we can. Thank you.
Okay, I've noted it. Any other questions? Can we scroll down a bit, please?
Can I say something before we scroll down?
Yes, sir.
The extension of Nuevo Hueco tanks,
Yes, sir.
where are we with that? With the planning, with engineering?
So my understanding from this one is that we are also pending documentation to be signed by TxDOT to us. Along with that is that the state is also doing a preliminary a feasibility study for this. And so there's two paths that are being taken. And so with regard to the preliminary component is where we will start the NEPA process, right? So let me just go back a bit with this one, is that what TxDOT is doing is that they're prepping everything in its relationship to the potential route, which would include a bridge structure, the drainage, and everything right up until an environmental clearance. So here with the preliminary engineering component that we have is that it'll pick up where the NEPA is at. So they are going to front load on their end the project, and then we're going to come back and finish the project from a clearance perspective, and then that will go into the construction component.
Okay, so my question is, why is it taking so long for them to do the agreement? It should have taken months already.
Right. So this is one of those projects that was just nominated maybe late last year. I do understand that the MPO has submitted it to the FHWA via TxDOT in the second quarter of the fiscal year. And so anytime now we should be hearing about this. So this project was actually programmed in fiscal year 2020, unlike other projects that were programmed either in fiscal year 19 or fiscal year 2018. So
Really?
it really is.
Why this is being held up? Why haven't we gotten signatures on this?
I mean, essentially, our local TxDOT district is the lead on these things. And so like the Arterial One, we are still pending a revision to the contract. So several months, actually late last year, we signed the agreement. They came back and they told us that we were eligible for the county disadvantage discount. And so from there, we still haven't heard from them. And so, to be quite honest with you, and I think this is a discussion that we've had at multiple levels, it's just that the wheels are turning very slow at TxDOT.
All right, who do we need to talk to? Because
So
I'll start calling tomorrow.
I think my recommendation is certainly to contact the district engineer. I think between the city manager and I, we've communicated to their contract personnel on status of this. In one of the most recent conversations that even the grant writer was involved in, we were told that we were receiving all the information, yet we have yet to receive it. So I think certainly contacting the district engineer and of course the MPO for these matters, because there are certain magnitude things here that we can look at by way of an executive order that was passed many years ago under the Clinton administration, that the benefit or the delay of such a project could be detrimental to the city. So what I'm talking about is environmental justice, and so there's a three-pronged test that one of those three could trigger discrimination. And so I think that that has been voiced certainly by me. And so if the state is holding it for legitimate reasons, I would understand if we had a constant communication with them, but because they've been very absent in the commission back to the city, I'm only left to wonder why it's taking, really so long to do these things.
Well, I need an email with information so I can get a hold of them.
Okay.
And move this, because this is something that's going to hold us back, and it's going to cost us more money as time progresses, and it's going to hinder us the ability to move forward on these projects on set times.
Right. Yeah, we'll certainly provide you the information for the district engineer.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
No.
Okay. Well, there we go. So the next heading is the survey and the dedications. And so here again is that because ultimately we will have to put out an RFQ, a request for qualifications to do the survey, unless there's an opportunity to have an agreement, for example, with the Lower Valley Water District, where they are actually doing projects in some of these roadways. So for example, Nancy Road, we do understand that they will be providing new service, I think it's water and wastewater, to a neighborhood that is just outside the city limits. And so preliminary discussions with them is that they're willing to say or actually share the information about their project and the survey work. What I have to make sure once this body decides to give us direction to do an interlocal agreement with them is to ensure that one, we are participating from a fiscal component, but also to ensure that the survey is done so that we can build a roadway, right? So essentially what you see for Nancy Road, Stockyard, Varela, Ormsby, and then now F.E. Jackson, again, going back to the earlier comment that I made is that at some point in time, the city either took the dedication and didn't follow through. And so we need to make sure that we have a survey done so that we can make a determination where that roadway the right of way should go so that we can provide that service to them. Now, with regard to Rural 21, which has the city boundary, is that with the decennial census, it is the responsibility of either a municipality or a governmental body to ensure that its city limits is correct. And so when we provided information to the US Census, we had to acknowledge that the current city limits that we have from a GIS perspective, the Geographic Information System or survey in itself is incorrect. So with this in mind is that we have to demonstrate, certainly before the next decennial census, that we need to do a survey. And so again, is that in the past, the survey that was done, by the city or whenever it was incorporated, um, provides some error. And then in the past where there was a section that was annexed, in lieu of just doing a whole new survey, they took the information from the last survey, as I understood, and just added on. So again, is that certainly I don't understand exactly what happened with what we call the georeference of that said survey. But nonetheless, is that when we go out, unless it's separate from the Lower Valley Water District or any other body that may have a project that we can piggyback and share the cost of doing the survey, we'll have to order a survey for this. Are there any questions on this?
Mayor,
Mr. Duran?
Mike, with regards to item 25 Ormsby Street, did we finally get everybody to sign off on that?
No, sir. Essentially, is that the approach that the city staff is taking is that we want to identify past decisions by this council or a previous body. And so one of the things here is that as we move forward, is that certainly we can do the same thing that we're going to be doing with Varela, where we communicate again with the community that's out there. And essentially, if there's a majority, if this body wills it, is to go in there and provide that assistance. So essentially is that if, for example, the Lower Valley Water District goes in there and says, look, we can provide service if the city is willing to negotiate the right of way. And if they are willing to do the survey, which they'll have to do because they have a project that's going in there, we can capitalize on the dedication and minimize really our effort. And so we can use that same survey to develop a roadway profile. So what you see there for Nancy Road, for Varela, for Ormsby, and F.E. Jackson is because I have had communication with them, and I've communicated that to the city manager, is that when it comes to these type of projects, that in the norm, we would absorb a lot of the cost. If we partner with an agency that is also doing these projects that require surveys, we should capitalize on having an agreement with them. So essentially, sir, is that we want to make sure that we have a lot of flexibility when it comes to identifying projects where we can lower our commitment in terms of cost.
Uh, quick question. So
Rodriguez?
the people that still owe money on taxes, isn't that gonna be detrimental for us moving forward in trying to uh, help, give services to these people? Well, not services itself, but I'm talking about doing the road improvements.
And I do know that we have involved in the past our legal team. And so for example, is that we also have just recently through this body identified certain stormwater projects that we need to be doing that would connect and alleviate a lot of the water issues that we're having that are coming from upstream. So the project that would essentially be coming from I-10 and then going through the Arroyo and feeding into the onion field, we've understood in communication with the county that there are properties, as they call them, are struck off. So essentially is that, as I understand it, unless Mr. Martinez wants to give a better legal definition, is that the county and the taxing agencies have essentially seized the properties. And they go out to bid and essentially sell the property. And so I think that, once our legal team has a better opportunity to examine strategies in the event that there is a property owner that is not paying taxes, if we can explore that strategy so that we can move the city forward in providing these type of services, really a better quality of life to the public.
Okay.
Mayor?
Mr. Martinez?
Yes, ma'am, Mr. Rodriguez, the short answer to your question is, yes, it creates a problem. I mean, if there are accrued taxes and liens have been filed, then it's a problem. It needs to be addressed on an individual basis.
Mayor?
Ms. Rodarte?
Yes, I just wanted to add that on Ormsby, that was what was pending, is that one of the properties, it does owe 10 years of back taxes. And that is what stopped us from moving forward to the dedication.
That's still a problem right now?
Correct.
Okay.
Ms. Villalobos?
Wasn't it also that the person that owes the money inherited are we talking about the same lot? Inherited the lot and for that reason, because he owes it, he wishes not to dedicate it?
We have had no positive contact with the owner. I know that either you or some of the residents were able to reach out to them, but we haven't been successful in doing so. But we do know that the reason that we didn't move forward was because we weren't in a position to pay back taxes on any property.
Okay, thank you.
There any further questions? Can we scroll down?
Do you need me to go to the next page or just right there?
Yeah, right there, Mila. Thank you. Yes. So as a continuation of the regional significant component here, we've identified transit improvements. And so let me start with line 34, because this is where the last communication we had is that by way of the CIP, we did identify 31 locations where either existing transit or new transit can go. And this would entail the installation of shelters with benches, the trash receptacles, bicycle rack, And of course, the approach to this shelter would be ADA compliant. The foothills of this is that at the same time, when we made this presentation last year, is that we were informed by the county that they were trying to develop what is called a local government corporation. So essentially, it would become a regional transit provider. It would have a board, and of course, it would have members from the participating bodies that make some financial contribution to the development of these new transit service routes. And so the estimate that you see there really is the lower end component that we would participate with. There was two presentations in the past that were presented to the body by county staff. There was, I believe, scenario 4 is what we looked at. And other bodies also agreed with scenario 4. And then I think ultimately the town of Horizon City went with number 6, which was service, countywide. But essentially is that and if I understand it correctly, and if this doesn't change, is that our contribution over a 3-year period would be $120,000. So I do understand that there was a presentation, I believe, last week by the county planning staff to the county commissioners. They had approved the development of the LGC. And so what is here before you is, of course, trying to capture that commitment by this body, if it's wished, to participate with this new transit routes within the city of Socorro.
Mayor.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes, the only issue I have now is that it's 31 shelters, okay? And they're gonna be ADA compliant. But we still haven't seen where they wanna place these, because if you're gonna place them like on Socorro Road or Alameda, okay, per se, there is no sidewalks for people in wheelchairs or disabilities to get to those. So my issue is, it's going to be very difficult, and I get it, and I understand. We do need transit in Socorro. There's not a lot of people with vehicles here that use our public transportation, and we do want to provide this service. But one of the things is that the cost of it is, why are we going to build something that there is no way somebody with disabilities to reach these shelters? Okay, those are the things that I will address when the county presents anything to us, because if we're going to put 31 shelters all across Socorro and half of those aren't going to be accessible to people with disabilities, then we do need to address that also, and the amount as well as our contributions, because we do need, that's a big issue for me. That's really a big issue. We want to provide this service to our residents one more time, but what's the point if they're not going to be able to access it? So I just want us to understand that, is that why are we going to build something in the middle of, a dirt road or no sidewalks? That's the issue. That's all I'm saying, is that when it be presented, we need to address this.
Ms. Villalobos?
Okay, Mr. Medina, can you answer that? I'm sure that there's a plan already for that.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. And so essentially, the at-large is correct. I think him and I are aligned on that discussion. The strategy here, if you all remember, at the last council where I presented the master sidewalk plan, one of the recommendations that I have, aside from the ones that staff was doing internally, is to make recommendations to TxDOT to build out those facilities that they own, and of course, Alameda, Socorro Road, and portions of North Loop, where we need the sidewalk. And so in theory, the true target for this participation and partnership is TxDOT. And so when we, in the near future, bring you a project list, it's also to communicate to TxDOT and its district engineer that we are asking for TxDOT to provide sidewalks along these major corridors. They have done studies, for example, on Alameda. They have communicated to us that they will also do a feasibility study for North Loop. But nonetheless, that is the strategy, ma'am.
Mayor?
Mr. Duarte?
Yes, and I just wanted to add that Alejandra did attend the MPO, and TxDOT is only recommending one shelter in Socorro. And Alejandra can give you a little bit of more information on that meeting she went to. We have talked to Commissioner Perez regarding our concerns. And I also think that when it was brought up to council by Mr. Sal Alonso from El Paso County, that the reason we were a little hesitant was because the LG Corporation was going to be by the commissioners and not through a separate party, like initially they had presented here in our council meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Medina.
No, I think you're quite correct. And going back to my earlier comment where the county planners made that recommendation to the county commissioners, it holds true. And so the idea here is that, you know, from our analysis, it's a 31 point component. And ultimately is that by way of the structure of the LGC, by way of the recommendations of their studies, and that I mean by TxDOT and the county, is that if the city isn't benefiting from that product, you know, in theory, we really shouldn't be participating from a financial perspective. Because understand is that the way they are rationalizing their financial model, we are actually paying more into this system. They call it the service mile component. And so there are more TxDOT roadways in our area than any other component outside the city of El Paso. And so just as a reminder is that although it's county led, the other smaller municipalities, of course, outside the city of El Paso are part of this umbrella. We are paying the greater component of it.
And I
Mr.
do have-
Rodriguez?
Yeah, and I correct me if I'm wrong. When they started to do the initial project, they said that we were going to have a seat at the table. Now, from what I understand, is that we aren't going to have a say, and only the commissioners are. What if we get somebody that doesn't really understand our city? You know, later on, and those are issues that I do have that I think that we should be wary of. That if this gets done and a commissioner comes in other than Perez that understands our struggles and doesn't, and another commissioner gets in and doesn't understand our area, our community, what if it's not favorable or comparable to us? And like Mr. Medina said, is that, you know, hey, nobody's going to speak out for us if it ain't us. So these are things that we need to address. So, I mean, I just want to throw it out there that, you know, there's 31 structures that they want to put, you know, it costs at almost $500,000. But what if half of them aren't accessible or 80%? Those are the things that we need to address. Is it the money that we're gonna pony up for these projects and get 90% of our residents that are disabled aren't going to be able to benefit from it or even to get to that point? Then what's the point? I'm not saying it's not a good project. I think it's a great project in and of itself. I just think that we need to address the elephant in the room as to, are we going to have a say? And we need to see if we're getting our money's worth.
Mr. Duran?
Mr. Duarte, you said that Socorro is only going to get one of those transit shelters?
Mr. Daran, yes, actually, TxDOT is only recommending one in Socorro. I know Alejandra can share a little bit more, and she even has the map available for you all. What I did want to just mention is that we do have to end this meeting at 5:20 in order to start our other meeting. So I don't know if we want to place an item on the agenda for a presentation from Alejandra in the next meeting, so you all can see the map and what the discussion was at the MPO level when the recommendations were made.
Yeah, because I'm wondering if the $480,000 price tag, how much of it is gonna be our share for one of the shelters? That doesn't seem like that's very cost effective.
Ms. Villalobos?
Just real quick, I know that those that are disabled can call Aliviane. I don't know if they come all the way over here. I mean, Stad, I'm sorry. And they get picked up. So I'm not sure if we're, we have all the information that we should have, but I think we should be making some noise. That's what I want to let everyone know. We should be making some noise as a whole because this is not right. It does not seem right at all.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Mayor, thank you. I'm in agreement with Mr. Duran as well. You know, we need to find out. I think that we should post an agenda item. If Mr. Duran wants to be my second, we'll put it up for the next agenda item, and we can discuss this further because almost $500,000 for just one. Then, you know, if you divide it, you know, it's 31 into $500,000. That's almost like over $15,000 each. So, but I understand that there's more to it than just the building of itself, the services areas. I know that we're talking about fuel and employee costs and all of that. But nevertheless, we do need to have an agenda item. So can you please do that for us?
Mr. Medina, and before we move on, I know that at the last council meeting, when this presentation was given, there was also a comments about possibly reaching out to the MPO for a trial of the project before it was done through the LGC, how the county is planning right now. Has there been any other talk about that?
Yes, ma'am. So essentially is that when the city became involved, I had recommended to the county to nominate this project as a pilot program. And the reason why is because it's an expansion of new service throughout the county. And so there is a specific federal funding component that makes this project eligible for 3 years. And so what the MPO has done is that it has incorporated it as part of one of the projects. I think they call it a strategic plan right now. I forget at the moment, but they have allocated, I believe, like $15 million of that said money based on, ultimately the city of Socorro's recommendation. So it is now federalized at the MPO level.
Thank you.
Any further questions? So moving away from the transit component, the next element is what we call the TASA program, or the Transportation Alternative Set Aside Program. And so this project actually came before you all for approval for submission to the MPO. We are happy to announce that we were awarded this funding. And so this is another project that we are currently waiting for the MPO to send the contract over so that we can start with the construction of this project. Are there any questions about this project on Passmore?
No, I'm happy.
Perfect. Okay, so with the TASA program, one of the other things that we have also done is in the past, whether through the MPO or through TxDOT, we've also made other recommendations for other trails or improvements that would, provide mobility. So I think the ones that you're really familiar with are the Safe Routes to School. And so what we're doing here with item 44 and 45 is that we are recommending to this body that we start the process either to nominate this either at the MPO or through another federal or state agency that will essentially allow us, to utilize their money so that we can start the improvements of a trail system. Not too long ago, whether it was done through the coordinator for the grant coordinator and myself, we adopted the Paso Norte Health Foundation Master Trail Plan. And so those two segments that you see there are a functionality of that adoption by this body. And so what we're asking for is essentially $400,000 for both of these, so that we're able to capitalize in moving forward and making nominations. Along with that is that we've had various communication either through some of the city council members and of course through the Cielo del Mar or Cielo de, forget the other.
Cielo del Rio
Uh,
2.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Cielo del Rio neighborhood. So essentially is that this is one of these projects where this city in itself had no true requirements. And so let me qualify that is that about a year ago or so, we adopted a master planning ordinance. And so now we have a park design. We give the component of the city of El Paso park design to be incorporated through our requirements now. And along with that is that we also require rock walls to be built with these ponds. So essentially is that prior to the adoption of this master plan ordinance, there really was no way for us to control or really exact what the park design is or was to include the rock wall. So we do have several ponds that do not have screening or rock walls. And so this is one area that we have identified that needs the rock wall currently to mitigate the sand blowing off when we have the very high extreme weather. We have installed a fencing along with screening so that we can control the trash and of course sand from going into the neighbors' yards. So what we have here is the recommendation to incorporate the improvements for the Cielos neighborhood park and pond in the amount of just over $100,000 in combination. Are there any questions or
Duran?
comments?
Mr. Duran?
Mike, is this like you were saying, the one from the Paso del Norte Health Foundation? I remember we had meetings with them, and is the Lower Valley Water Improvement District? I remember them wanting to be a part of it. Are they being included in this, or is this just strictly from the Socorro, the city of Socorro?
So by way of communication, we have communicated. I mean, our grant writer has done a very tremendous job in keeping that communication open. And so the idea here, again, is to have seed money so that we can either engage, the Paso Note Health Foundation, or even if we move forward and have a local, agreement with the irrigation district, is to partner on those type of opportunities. So here is that because ultimately we are on their right of way, and having an interlocal agreement is that we can share the cost. And as mentioned before, I think that Mr. Reyes is a very willing partner when it comes to making these improvements, not only because it improves the quality of life, to be quite honest with you, but I think that he saves a lot on maintenance.
Yeah, because I remember from the meetings we had that they would do the labor if we provided the materials. And I don't know if that
Mhm.
agreement is still in force, but I think that's something we can capitalize on, because I think a walking path would bring some dollars to Socorro, not just as improvements, but then the tourism trade.
Correct.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Hey, I was just gonna make a comment. Um, yes, there's agreements in place and we've talked to them, Mr. Duran. Mr. Reyes has been very helpful, instrumental. Right now, we're expanding the bridge on Rio Vista um, with their help. You know, remember that we in council back a couple of months, if not a year or so, we did do the interlocal agreement again. So it was put in place on that time where we were going to revamp all our bridges, and with their help and contributions, we were going to get this done. The other thing is that as far as walkways and rock walls and stuff, I know that our master plan didn't have it, and that's why I did bring it to council. And I believe it was Mr. Nevares or Mr. Perez who did my second, so that we can revamp it because it didn't have it. Therefore, because it was an issue that we're having parks slash ponds together, and it wasn't right. And I did bring it to council. We did revamp it, and that's the things that I don't like is that some of our ordinances are antiquated. You know, we need to tackle them and change them because that's the issue that we face in Socorro. We talk about quality of life all the time. And I've always said that, you know, why is it that we're allowing park slash ponds, when it rains, kids can't go to the park. So what's the point? So we did do the changes. We did bring it up, and we as council voted to change all of that. So I just want to reiterate that it didn't have it on the master plan, but we did fix it. And we're going to continue to fix and revamp our ordinances as we see fit, because it's not about what we want, it's about the quality of life. And we need to revamp all our ordinances. My biggest pet peeve that I've said all along in council is that we need to get these done quick. I don't like the fact that it's taking us 4, 5, 6 months to change an ordinance. So I don't know what we have to do on our end, but we need to do something so that we can cut all the red tape so that we can get this done faster. Because just like annexation, those are the things, is that it takes forever and yet the law changed on us. And then what happens? We don't get anything done. Same thing with ordinances. We changing our ordinances. We're trying to revamp and give quality of life, and yet it takes forever. And yet a developer comes in, brings out a plat, and it's done. And we can't even give them the quality of life that our residents deserve. So those are issues for administration and just for us council to know that we do need to revamp a bunch of our ordinances because they're antiquated. We need to change with the times. We need to facilitate a lot of things here in Socorro, because there's a lot of issues that are facing and plaguing our residents. So just letting you guys know that yes, we just like we revamped our master plan, and then we came back later on and revamped and made sure that there's rock walls and there's sidewalks and stuff like that. We're gonna do it, and we're gonna split the park slash ponding, and no longer, because I even threw a video in there when I brought it up. So we do need to revamp. I'm just saying that we should do it, and hopefully we get this done.
Let's move on.
Okay, and so the next item there, as we scroll up, is the infrastructure planning. And so these are the elements that we're moving forward with this fiscal year. Why on row 48, it just says plan, that's actually, it should read neighborhood traffic management plan. And this is the one where we're gonna be introducing new mechanisms to control traffic. This will replace the speed hump request that we all are very familiar with. Along with that is the economic development plan and the comprehensive plan. One thing that I want to point out here is that I have had a recent discussion in terms of our next move, if you will, or that grant writer, specifically because she's the one that's leading along with Mr. Urata, the census element for the city. And so we can certainly let these projects this fiscal year. One thing that I want to comment is that because there are other opportunities with the US Census coming online, late next year, and then also the MPO is actually developing a new plan. And we understand also very recently that the county of El Paso is also developing a comprehensive plan. There's other opportunities for us to capitalize on what they're doing that would save us cost. But certainly is that I do want to assure everybody here is that these three elements will let before the end of this fiscal year. Is there any questions on this category, the infrastructure planning? Okay. Uh, Moving to the next one, the next heading is a local match. And so this is one of those other items that was approved last year. And so what we do is that we buy potential federal and state to use as a match, whether it's an 80-20 split or whatever the program requires us to pay. And of course, the one for the MPO is really in magnitude the amount that we have committed in terms of the projects that we talked about at the very beginning. So essentially is that we have nearly $1.8 million available for match for all our MPO projects. And this also includes the TxDOT element because they're the ones that we signed the contract with. Are there any questions on the local match? Okay, can we scroll down? Okay, moving again forward is that we had allocated $1 million for the bridge expansion. And so these are two projects on Rio Vista and Bovi. There have been some movement on Rio Vista with them. However, we're still working on the bridge section expansion. And so we're also doing that for Bovi in coordination with the irrigation district. The next component is the sidewalk improvements, and this is an item that was approved by the council the last time I gave the presentation on the master plan, on the master sidewalk plan. So what you see here are the 12 sections that we've identified for approval. And what you're looking at there is the estimated cost that I had and then the projected cost. Any questions on these? The next item
Mr.
is the
Rodriguez?
street striping. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. What we said when you brought it up, we said that you will present us and we are allocated in a certain amount. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pick out and see how many we can do with the amount that we set forth.
That's correct.
Just to say that, just because it says $765,620, and just to let everybody know that that's not the full amount, because we set an amount and we said administration is going to go out there, they're going to do their numbers and then bring us back the streets that they said this is the amount and this is a threshold and these are what we can do with that amount that you guys give us.
Mayor?
Mr. Arte?
Yes, that was the first conversation, but a couple meetings back, Mr. Medina presented to council, and this is the option 4 of the different options that were presented to council at that meeting. So we're
And
just,
at the last meeting, the very last meeting, when we presented that, we took action and we said, yes, we'll go with this plan, but we gave you a number and you're going to pick from all these streets to not pass that number. And administration is responsible for that. And you can go back to the film.
I think certainly we'll re-examine that, but by way of the capital improvement program, again, is that we're providing a holistic approach of the past decisions. And so this was one recommendation, understanding the other component that was added to the motion. And so certainly as we move through time and you get ready to adopt this, we will certainly, adjust it to ensure that we're within financial constraint.
Mayor, I do have
President?
the minutes here because this was discussed on May 7th. And it just says that a motion was made by Mr. Nevada, seconded by Mr. Perez, and there was an amended motion by Mr. Nevada, seconded by Mr. Rodriguez to approve the half-built with a cap of $400,000, and that motion passed.
Are there any other questions?
No.
The next element is also coming forward from last year. Again, this is one of those projects that was impacted in the whole weather, freaky weather that we had early this year. And of course, with COVID-19 is that it has really damped our public works from moving forward and paving and of course striping. And so essentially, this is one of the elements that is part of this hybrid list that we certainly will be doing once we are able to work out in the field. Can we scroll down? Another one that's coming from the last fiscal year, or actually this current fiscal year, are the parking lots. And so here, there are dedicated funds from the last CIP that was approved for paving Rio Vista and the municipal court area. Any questions on this? Can we move to the next page? We had some success with the street repaving. However, again, due to the weather and to COVID-19, is that this is the new listing. We are currently working on Parker, Sofima and Sudan and Judy. Again, is that the illustrative list there finishes off with Nancy as the old list. What we're adding here is Montevideo. So if y'all remember, is that there was some components that the school did there off of Montevideo that really damaged the city roadway. And so essentially we blocked the entrance to the school. And so we are nominating Montevideo to be repaved as part of the street repaving program. Any questions on this one?
Mayor?
Durarte?
Yes, just to let you know, I just received a message from Mr. Rodriguez. I guess the system kicked him out, so he's trying to log back in. I just, as an FYI.
There's no questions on this. The next element that's also coming from the last capital improvement program is the stormwater facilities. There was prior approval to do the Onion Field Phase 2, the channel improvements that we're working on right now currently as well, and of course the Starkyard Detention Basin. And so in the next coming weeks, we're going to have a better estimate of those three projects that we're doing, because certainly is that we want to make sure that the body puts us in the right direction in terms of the priority. And in the past is that we do understand that the channel improvements are a priority. Are there any questions with the stormwater facilities program? Okay. So one of the things here, I'm sorry, can you go back to the very last one right there? Yeah, is the structure. And so here are incorporated elements that we are asking to either purchase pre-manufactured buildings, warehouses or whatever it is, and also the design plan for the rehab of Budo Vista. And also there was previous uh, approval to make further improvements at the police department headquarters. And so essentially with the mechanic shop, we would be buying a Quonset hut so that our mechanics can work inside that said facility. The Budo Vista Community Center would be looking at the design and the plans for the full rehab of the center. And of course, going back to the elevated structure of a walkway, paving, and of course, sidewalk improvements that have been previously approved. Any questions here? We can move to the next page. And finally, this is the last of the listing here. And so we carry forward again the approved uh, engineering services that we have currently with Dannenbaum. And so we're carrying again over. The next component is the machinery equipment. And so we are still working on some of the elements by way of cost. But what you see there is an illustrated list of what we're looking for to support the workload for Public Works. So ultimately, they're looking at a loader, steel roller, a 2 utility trailer street sweeper, a two 5 to 6 yard dump trucks, heavy haul truck, the common law is a lowboy, 2 more dump trucks, a vacuum truck, a skid steer, a backhoe, a zero turn mower, 2,000-gallon water truck, excuse me, and then 2 pickup trucks. So over the last year, I mean, we have really seen a lot of movement by Public Works, and of course, we need to make sure that their operation is foremost, ready to respond to the needs of the city. The last component, if nobody has any questions with regard to Public Works, is our security improvements. And so here it is essentially to provide assistance and security to municipal court. And what we're programming here are the keyless door ingress and egress equipment. This is commonly what we call using the badges to come in and out. We are looking at the design criteria and what we need to do to safeguard the clerks along with the municipal court judge by way of having bulletproof paneling in the building. And then the next thing we are trying to do is to also support municipal court code enforcement along with our police department is having wireless ticket writers and software. And so essentially what you see here is the support for municipal court, but I think ultimately, again, to reemphasize, this is a working list of our capital improvement program.
Mr. Duran?
Mike, with regard to item number 150, the municipal court technology, don't they have a fund that is used, or is a certain portion of every ticket goes into that fund for technology?
Yes, sir, that is correct. And that's where we would be funding this project.
So in other words, the money in that would pay for this instead of having to come out of the general fund, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So the idea here, again, is that we want to demonstrate an illustrative list. And so as we get ready to improve, as we get ready to approve this plan, I'm going to show you exactly if it was approved in the previous capital improvement program, if the MPO, for example, gave us money, and in this case, if it's a funding mechanism that the state provides. Okay. Can you think with that, if there's any other questions with regard to the list as a whole? Well, I think at this point, I'll turn it over to our city manager.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Councilors. So we're reaching 5:20 p.m. I don't know if you all want to end the workshop. We will have another workshop in the next 2 weeks with the capital improvement program. So if you want to go ahead and review the program and make any changes to it for the next workshop, and then on the next workshop, Unless you have any recommendations for us today, we can finalize it on our next meeting.
Jim, do we need to delete the unfinished items?
No, ma'am, it's not necessary. You can adjourn.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Rene Rodriguez is absent. Cesar Nevares,
He's late. Yes.
Ralph Duran,
Yes.
Victor Perez is absent, and Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
5:21, meeting adjourned.
See you in a bit.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.